Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Purpose and Politics, where we discuss two different areas of our society. The first is how people are pimping our poverty to support palliative care-driven society. But we also take a look at solutions unknown, and these are solutions that amazing people have innovated and have put forward for their community segments that are actually working and making a difference. And this morning we get to speak to a true American hero, Marine Colonel retired C.J. Williams. He and his family spent 32 years serving this remarkable country on more tours and billets than I can keep up with, and I'm sure he'll get into that when he talks in a second. But we're delighted to have him on board because he has his boots on the ground and he is helping a segment of our society that gets a lot of press and a lot of narrative. And of course, we're speaking about veterans today. But unfortunately, as with many other subjects, the narrative and the press is often incorrect. The narrative seems to be, Colonel, that all veterans are in need. And it's shameful that when people picture veterans, they're picturing people holding up cardboard placards at intersections, sleeping under underpasses, and in need. And we need to change that narrative because that is not even close to being correct. So welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself and then take that question as your first one.
Thank you, Stuart. Good morning. I've really been looking forward to joining you on your podcast, and I congratulate you on its success thus far. And I know it'll only climb from there. And very aptly named The Politically Incorrect Guide to Purpose and Politics. I happen to also be friends with Stuart, and we've had many a conversation that you probably shouldn't record, but about some of these issues. So I'm C.J. Williams. I am, as Stuart said, I'm a retired Marine. I was a career infantryman in the Marine Corps for 32 years and had many various staff positions as well, to include a joint tour as the Director of Current Operations for the continent of Africa, the J-33 it's called, and ran all U.S. military operations on the continent of Africa for 2 years out of Stuttgart, Germany. So we've had a lot of experience, my family and I, moving around. We built a house here in Nexton, Somerville, and when we moved into that house, rebuilt it. That was my 25th move in 32 years. So we have we're skilled at folding boxes, I guess you could say. But this is hopefully the last stop on that parade. And I was lucky enough to meet Stuart and I met him serving on a board of directors for a not-for-profit called Impact Low Country. And I operate in the veteran space. I represent the veteran space to that board. And Stuart, I also serve, as ridiculous as it sounds, on 4 other not-for-profit boards, all of which are volunteer positions. I would never take a dime to represent the veteran space. And so I operate in the veteran space every single day. I'm also, as my day job, the director of the Veterans Business Outreach Center here at the Tommy and Victoria Baker School of Business on the campus of the Citadel. And we are charged with teaching entrepreneurship with some leadership and ethics across the state to all veterans and their families who wish to start or grow a business. That's our day job, if you will. Your question is very prescient. Let's put it that way, Stuart, because I every single day work in the veteran space. Okay, and that narrative, which I am happy to say, that false narrative that's out there, and it's promulgated every day. If you just watch TV for a couple of hours, there will be a commercial on there that furthers the narrative that all veterans are, like you said, standing under an underpass with anything help sign. First off, 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, with the rare exception of those folks, are not veterans. They are people who use that as their shtick, right? That's their gimmick. And so I will usually stop and talk to them and say, "So who are you with?" And they'll make up some ridiculous thing. "Oh, I'm a Marine and I was with the 422nd Airborne Tank Battalion." Okay, stop, right? There's no such thing. Right. So now I've exposed the fact that you are not actually a veteran and you're just using our space to promote your space. And I'm not going to support that. That said, I don't want to sound callous at all, because there are absolutely veterans that are in need, no doubt about it. But I will tell you, it is a fraction of a percent of the veterans. Every year, approximately 200,000 people transition from active duty military or the reserves into the veteran space. And of those 200,000, it's incredibly rare that you have somebody who is so down on their luck. And most times that's self-generated, bad, hard on your luck. So I would ask people to not subscribe to that narrative. Okay, I mean, ask the questions of someone who's claiming to be a veteran in trouble, and if necessary, refer them to me. I can take care of them. All the boards that I serve on, we provide. Next weekend, I'll be on St. Christopher's providing a veterans leadership course for people who either just want to improve their leadership skills, and sometimes we do have at-risk veterans out there, and we get them the counseling that they need. We have professionals that are out there, and it's very fulfilling work. But if I can put some data behind what I just said, if you ever watch a movie that's set in a World War II setting, right? Technicolor movie or whatever, it's the a World War II setting, you would get the impression that every person in America is wearing a uniform of some sort. Everybody on the screen is in uniform. Truth is that less than 10% of the American public actually wore the uniform during World War II. Okay, so the narrative is everybody served and it was a unifying effect and all that stuff. And that's in many ways true, but the truth is less than 10%. Okay. In Korea, that's about 2%. And then Vietnam, longer war at the time, the longest war for us, it was about 3%. And now, in the global war on terror, America's longest war by far, we've been fighting it for 25 years, a fraction of 1% have actually worn the uniform, the cloth of this country. And so the population, but here's the stark difference on that, Stuart. Less than 1% of people wore the cloth, but veterans own 5.5% of the businesses in the United States. That is disproportionate in a way that's even difficult to describe. Or they employ 3.3 million Americans are employed by a veteran-owned small business. They produce 1.4. This is a great data point. They produce $1.14 trillion in receipts in those 5.5%, and the wages that they pay to their employees topple close to $200 billion a year. Okay, that does not, to me, scream a society, an entire segment of society that is in distress. Okay, to me, it says that we operate and live in a society with veterans that are thriving, absolutely thriving. The secretary of the VA for South Carolina is a gentleman, a fantastic gentleman named Major General Todd McCaffrey, United States Army, retired. So he's a 2-star retired. And he's making a concerted effort to flip the script on the narrative. And by doing things like promoting the Veterans Business Outreach Center, where veterans come and we help them start or grow a business or their families, and there's a coalition of businesses, many businesses or services that he's culled together that support the veteran space. And not just with counseling, right? That's whatever they need, you can pretty much find in that coalition. So he has taken an active stance in flipping the script on that narrative, and I couldn't support him more in his efforts, because it's disheartening when I hear people, if you say you're a veteran and somebody gives you a empathetic look, like, oh, like, what are you talking? What? Yeah, I'm friends with Stuart Williams. What are you talking about? I got no problem. that's just, and that is because that narrative is promulgated so prolifically on social media, on broadcast media, you name it. There just aren't positive stories out there, only the negative ones, and many a times that's so that people will donate to sometimes disreputable veteran support causes. And I won't name any names. I don't want to do that, but I'll tell you this: the magic number is 10. Okay, if you're going to give your money to a not-for-profit, a charity, whatever it is, the magic number is 10%. Okay, anything less than 10% administrative costs, that's probably pretty good, right? But there are veteran agencies out there that are quote unquote not-for-profit who have up to 70% administrative costs, right? And a private jet and $750,000 a year salary for the executives, that's not a charity or a cause that's worth your money, okay? Because that's a not-for-profit, or that's a for-profit organization masquerading as a not-for-profit, and they're promulgating this narrative that everybody needs help. Well, that's just simply not true based on the stats I just gave you. If that addresses.
Well, Colonel, those stats are accurate. I know them because you've shared some of them with me before, and we've researched it. And the problem is that the narrative that's perpetuated, and we'll get into, of course, why it's perpetuated, results in the people that absolutely do need the help. And again, we're not here to suggest that there are veterans that do not need help. We've all seen the statistics on suicides per day, and that has to come down to zero. People talking about cutting it by 10% and 15% and 20%, that's unacceptable. One is unacceptable. But the issue is that these narratives disavow the capitals or the amount of money that is allocated and services that are allocated to the people that truly need it to get to those people. And so here we go again. This is another genre where palliative care creates a palliative society, and where the people that really need the help are not getting the help that they need. And that's a critical issue, because over the last 100 years, governments and NGOs have used empathy as an asset class. The second that they found out that palliative equaled profit, they realized that empathy is an asset class, and an asset class, to your point, that can have remarkable returns. And so they look for demographics of people that need help. They spin up these narratives to get all of our empathy swimming in their direction. They raise far more money, to your point, than actually gets to the problem itself. And that's why you have a status quo. And that's why, unfortunately, with veterans, as it is with other demographics of people, we don't generally see things getting better. They're either at a status quo or they're getting worse, because people realize that curative is not as profitable as palliative. And so let's not think that these narratives are accidental. These narratives are deliberate. And they're deliberate to keep this palliative society running. And so if we take that into consideration, Colonel, talk a little bit about the work that you are doing and how you are touching. I think you've touched over 1,000 veterans and their families over the last 2 or 3 years that are setting up businesses or they want to pursue a career in the private sector. Talk a little bit about the solution that you have that's working so well.
I thank you, Stuart. I will. And again, and I'll reinforce this all the time, is that there are absolutely people who are in need of things, okay? But and I'm happy to do it. And every organization I belong to in some way is about supporting the veteran community. But what I promote is not its assistance to, it's support for the veteran cause. Like, You want to open a business, okay? And why does a veteran want to open a business? You learn things in the military. And I tell people, I talk to all of the classes that are transitioning across the state, 7 installations across the state, major military installations, and we go there and we teach people who are transitioning out of the military and want to get into the entrepreneurship track. And I tell them, you're going to be told by many people when you get out of the military, take the uniform off. You're not in the military anymore, so don't act a certain way or do this. And I agree with that to an extent, but don't take off the intangibles of the uniform, right? Valuing relationships, being a problem solver, being a critical thinker, being someone who's ethical and reliable and stands up straight and that sort of thing. That makes you stand out in many segments of our society. And those are things that you learn from the military. So yeah, take the uniform off. I've got that. But don't take off the qualities that led you to being in the uniform and learning from it. Okay. Because that tends to make them a member of those statistics that I read. So I have one board, Vantage Point Foundation, which is it's amazing. We have very few paid employees. We have an executive director, of course, and we have an operational psychologist and a clinical caseworker or a nurse. We have that because we do get veterans that need that level of assistance, and that's wonderful. And then 4 times a year or so, we go out to Seabrook Island and we teach a 3-day veterans leadership course. And I've been, I don't know how many times, to that course and sat there, and I learned something every single time I'm there, let alone the person that's the first time they've seen it, right? I've seen it a dozen times and I learned something. But it's not designed to offer the palliative care that you just mentioned, because it's brilliant, right? It is very much curative. It's not about here's assistance. Here's about how to assist yourself, right? By building resiliency and understanding yourself, right? What we call the warrior's journey. And the warrior's journey, of course, is cyclical. Everybody wants to be the ultimate warrior, and have graduated from all that stuff. Well, that doesn't work that way. Okay. We have I catch myself all the time. We have what are called masked wanderers. We put on a mask and we look all positive and, oh my God, my life's awesome. But inside, what are we really thinking? And so your journey is to process all of that stuff and realize the qualities that you brought with you from the military or military experience, whatever it is, or your experience as a military family member, and turn those into positive effects in your life. My kids, I have 2 kids, and they're both grown now and gone, but they can walk into any room and be friends with 5 people in 10 minutes because they've moved all over the world and they're resilient, right? And I'm proud of them for doing that and that they can do that. You have to take those skills that they could very easily sit around and say, well, I went to 10 different schools, Dad, so I don't relate to this, that, and the other thing. But I don't let them do that, right? You learn to be resilient. And so they're wonderful kids. The palliative care, and I love the relationship palliative to profit, okay? There are 501c3s out there, or not-for-profits, I should say, that are designed to keep you in a need status, because that need status generates their coffers, right? It fills their coffers with either grants from the government or state government or whatever it is, or donations that they get from around the country and around the world. And so as long as they can keep somebody in a status where they need, they can continue to fill their coffers, as opposed to like the 501c3 or the not-for-profit that I sit on with you in Impact Low Country. There's not a soul in there that takes a salary. Our administrative costs are 0%. Mm-hmm. Right? And we do offer curative care, right? The curative care being going to underserved segments of our society and providing education, which is the coin of the realm. Okay? Education is and I don't care what level it is. It doesn't have to be college. It can be a skill. It can be whatever it is, right? I'm not talking about college education, but education is the coin of the realm, and that's what we provide for those folks so that they have a fighting chance out the gate. And we get them young, from 3rd to 12th grade, and then certainly the veteran community, and we provide education. You and I teach with Jenny. Every Tuesday we teach at the Al Cannon Correctional Facility, right, the jail.
And sometimes there are veterans in our class.
Absolutely. Jonathan Hill. And my wife at first was like, "You're really going to go into jail and teach?" And I said, "Yeah, because you don't understand. These men, they're all men in there. There's no women. These men have never had a chance. Like they never had a fighting chance, right? If you remember Mr. Champagne, right? One of my favorites, right? He couldn't spell, read, or write his name when we met him.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's working with Trident College to try and get an associate's degree, right? And he understands, and they have said to you and I several times, they'll pull us aside and say, "Hey, I just want you to know I just learned more in an hour and a half than I did in 4 years of high school." And that's incredibly sad, but also, it fills the heart at the same time. And, the goal there being to bring down recidivism rates, because what happens if you don't actually teach them in the jail? When they get out, they're literally shown the front door when they're released from jail, and they don't even know where the bus stop is.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they going to do? They're going to turn right back to the life that brought them into the jail, which is why in South Carolina, pardon me, in South Carolina, the recidivism rate, which is the rate for anybody that's released within 5 years, 80% of them are reincarcerated. That's the most horrific statistic I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
And knock wood, of course, and we know it'll change, maybe, the recidivism rate for the 40 or 50 or so people who've been through our program and subsequently been released, the recidivism rate's currently 0.
And that's hard evidence to ignore. Now, there are skeptics, mainly from organizations that have been doing this work for decades and do not have the same results. And that comes out of fear, because, as you mentioned earlier, we don't take any money from anybody, but there are organizations that do. And what you're touching on, I believe, and I've had even death threats through emails on this. I believe that one of the hallmarks of a palliative society is one that will do whatever it can to rob us of our agency so that it can try and sell it back to us in monthly installments. And these folks, whether they're government or whether they're certain NGOs, they're not trying to win the war on a crisis. They're just trying to make sure the war is well funded enough to keep them comfortable. And so oftentimes what we find, even in the veteran space, is that when you show up boots on the ground with a curative innovation or solution, the people that you're fighting in order to scale that so more people can avail themselves of it and rise themselves up and cure their own socioeconomic problems, the people that end up trying to suppress you, therefore the people you end up having to battle to scale it, are the very people that you would have initially thought would have helped you.
I couldn't agree more. More hard evidence, right? I deal with a bunch of, and you and I both do, right? This isn't about me. Deal with a series of not-for-profits. And I work with one called the Tri-County Veteran Support Network, Mr. Tim Taylor, who's going straight to heaven. He does a really, really good service for our veterans. He deals with the veterans that really are in trouble, okay? Mm-hmm. And they need some assistance. And he gets them on their feet, and they have to meet certain requirements, like you have to have a job, you have to stay clean, and Tim will provide you with low-cost housing, and I try to help them get a job through a former job that I had and get them back on their feet. And that, the introduction of dignity is an amazing curative effect, right? And so, but I've talked to other veteran space, quote unquote, 501c3s, and I've mentioned that I work with this Tri-County Veterans. And they're like, God, I don't like that. Like, okay, take a knee. Tell me, why don't you like? What is it that they're doing wrong? And I've picked up on the narrative from them. It's that not that they don't like him. It's that they see him as competition, mm-hmm. right? In order and taking food off their table. That, what a poor way to think about your 501c3 is that you don't want somebody else to be successful. If the goal of every not-for-profit isn't to be out of business, then I don't want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because your goal should be to be out of business, that your services are no longer required. And you see far too many that are like, well, I got to grow my not-for-profit. I'm like, yeah, that's totally counterintuitive to what the thought of a not-for-profit is. Okay, be out of business. That's your goal.
Well, I think one of the things that I'd like to interject here is that I had my graduate students at the College of Charleston a number of years ago do a huge research project for me on the NGO community. And what we discovered was that actually 51% of them really need more funding than they're getting, because they're actually boots on the ground and they're trying to effect cures. The other 49% should be shut down tomorrow. And then I have no issue with the money that's saved from those actually then going to the ones that are making something happen. But to your point, even those not-for-profits have to start to learn to migrate from compete to collaborate, and from transact to transform. And that is a difficult hurdle, because they're all worried about losing donors. And frankly, we've allowed parts of our society to, and I'm going to use this word, professionalize and profit from compassion to the point of absurdity. And not only, as I mentioned earlier, has empathy become an asset class with incredibly high returns, we also now have an empathy tax. And it really is just a protection racket wrapped in a press release. It's nothing more or nothing less than that. And so our veterans, who have, in many instances, put everything on their line, for people that haven't served, it's not just the actual man or woman that's in one of the branches of a wonderful military that's serving. The entire family is serving. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing is a total disservice to the veteran community of this country. Not only the small percentage, and again, it's unacceptable, but it is a small percentage of vets that really need help because of the narrative that's spun up. But also, because of that narrative, we're doing a disservice to the incredible veterans who don't need any help. To your point, to the ones that are building businesses, that are solving problems, that are stepping forward to serve, again, like you, just in a different uniform. Because most of the veterans I know want to, in some way, stay engaged with serving the country that they love.
I agree, Stuart. When I transitioned out of the military, after 3+ decades of doing it, two things happened that I didn't see coming, and I wish somebody had mentioned it to me when I was transitioning. I would have been better prepared. One was very challenging, and one is probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. The challenging thing was that I didn't realize that for 32 years, my recreational drug was talking to Marines and sailors and soldiers and airmen. Like, that was my recreational drug. It didn't even matter what you were talking about, right? But they were my tribe, right? We're very tribal. Mm-hmm. We'll make fun of each other, mm-hmm. right? But God help you if you're a civilian and you make fun of an airman, right? I can do it all day, and I do.
Yes.
Okay, but that's our love language, if you will. That's our tribe. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I went cold turkey, and it was a little difficult, right? The adjustment of not being around these absolutely wonderful human beings, men, women of every race, every type, model, series you can imagine. Didn't matter. You were unified by the cloth, and everybody became your tribe. Are there wrinkles? Yeah, it's an organization, okay? But it's my tribe. And going cold turkey, my wife called me out on it immediately that I needed to get it together. So that led to probably the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, and that was I didn't realize that I had never really connected with a community before. And I don't mean my tribe, I connected with them, but I never connected with Jacksonville, North Carolina, or San Diego, California, or Stuttgart, Germany, or Washington, D.C. as a community. And then to come here and via General Livingston and Tommy Baker, and very much yourself, to be invited into, no kidding, the fabric of a community and to belong to these organizations. I genuinely try to do good things for all segments of society. I just happen to represent the veteran, right? But any underserved community, we're trying to hit all of the segments. Being a part of a community, it's like having a hometown for the first time since I was 18. And that is a great sense of not accomplishment. It's a great sense of belonging and fulfilling. And so, what I will tell you is, and I 100% with you, that empathy is empowerment, and empathy is a profit builder, like nothing else. It builds profit fast, if that's your goal. But being, so I will tell you not all five, or not all not-for-profits are that way. I would concur, and I haven't read the data, but I would concur that it is 51-49. I buy that. Because I've seen.
Well, that's what it was before COVID. I don't know what it is today. I'm sure the pendulum hasn't swung very far, to be honest with you. And when I look at the people I meet in my journey, my give back journey, around the world, actually, not, as you know, I travel a lot, not just in South Carolina. Every time I see a problem, I also meet more people than should be there saying that, well, they're going to spin up another not-for-profit. And again, I'm just waiting for the emails to come flying in. This world needs another not-for-profit like it needs a hole in the head. Let's support the great ones that we have. Let's jettison the ones that are doing nothing. In fact, it's worse than nothing because they're a choke point to the capitals that our great veterans need. And this whole idea, and I didn't grow up in America, and it was a shock to me when my young children started playing sport and we got Mr. Williams, it's equal playing time. I was like, what on earth is equal playing time? Well, everyone has to have this. Oh, and we need to buy 4,000 trophies. Well, why? Because everybody gets a trophy. And the damage that has done is palpable 30 years later. Because what we're now doing is we're replacing the pursuit of victory with the performance of virtue. And so I know that when you led your brave men and women into battle, they went with virtue because they're virtuous people in the Marines. But God damn it, they were there for victory. They weren't just down there waving their virtue flag saying, hey, don't shoot at us. We're all good people. We're all in this together. Hell no. They were coming there to unload a bunch of whoop-ass on you, even though they were virtuous people. And so this is what we've done as a society. We no longer want victory. We want virtue. As long as I feel good about it, it doesn't matter if the child is still hungry, or the woman is still getting beaten, or the vet is still committing suicide. Because I can feel virtuous about, I'm providing some palliative care. No, we need victory. We need no hungry children. That's a victory. We need no veterans committing suicide. That's a victory. And so when I watch you work, and it's an honor to teach with you at the Citadel in the evening to these amazing vets that come into our class, I see you pursuing victory.
Absolutely.
In a virtuous manner, no doubt, but you are there to pursue victory because you have a goal That is that vet's life is a little bit better tomorrow than it was when they walked in your class the day before. And if you continue to do that, and you continue to do that over a period of time, that's a victory. And that's what we need more of. How would you assimilate that into your world in the Marines?
Well, the Marines, first and foremost, thanks for that, Stuart. All of the services. I speak fluent Marine, right? But I'm including all the services. Okay.
Well, you better, because my father-in-law is a 2-star admiral, and
I've met him, and he's terrifying. But my point is that those organizations are founded on accountability, not just for the unit, but the individual. Okay. And I tell the veterans that I counsel, first off, there's no second place trophy in a firefight. Okay. Like, there just isn't, right? There's first place or no place. Okay.
Well, it's first place or a folded flag going to your relatives.
Exactly. So you're going to want people to, I tell people routinely, fair is 2 weeks in September. Okay. Fair has nothing to do with what we're doing here. Okay. Whether you think so or not. But I tell my veterans and I tell my students, I'm a 49-51 guy. Okay. I'll come 49%, but you have to come 51 because you can't make me care more about you than you do. Okay. I'll put a pathway before you. I'll give you an azimuth to follow. Okay. But I'm not going to walk the road with you. Okay. You have to walk that road. You have to actually do the work. And the great part about dealing with the veterans and their families is that they're all about that. Like, they like hearing that, right? Okay, yeah, I got to come 51%. I get it, or more. And because that reminds them of the challenge that they had when they wore the cloth. And so you can't just offer all of these, to quote you, palliative care services, because people become dependent. And when you become dependent, you're filling somebody else's coffers, and that just doesn't work, okay? The folks that I've dealt with who have actual PTSD.
Not the manufactured kind, you mean?
Exactly. Not
the person that came to me and honorable, loved the fact that they signed up and wanted to serve the country, but spent all 4 years, and I won't say which base it was on, as a loader for C-130s. Never deployed, never, just stayed in the same place. How that happened, I don't know. Maybe it was an overlap with COVID or something, right? But did nothing but, and it's an important job. I get it, right? Loading C-130s or whatever they're called today. And that person came to me, looked me dead in the eye, and said, I really need help from you, Stuart, because I'm a vet and I have terrible PTS. And my comment was, son, I don't know what the hell you have, but you do not have that. And again, it's this, why are we doing things that take away from the people that do need the help?
That's the first thing. Wow, that's such a great, and it is called the Politically Incorrect Guide to Purpose in Politics.
Yes, it is.
That's a real thing, okay? Now, I'm never going to be one of those people that says there's no such thing as PTSD, because there is, okay?
There absolutely is.
I know plenty of service members that I served with, who just saw things that people shouldn't see, or a part of things that they shouldn't, and they do need a support network, okay? And
can I just inject 1 second? I want the listeners to understand. I am 100% on board with that. When you go through some of the things that people go through, it's remarkable that some of them don't have it. But I would go that far. But my point, Colonel, is that when you've got people that clearly may have something, right? But it's certainly not that. And they're trying to take from the allocation of resources that are there and meant for the people that really do have it. Now what you're doing is you're reducing the amount of assets that are there for the people that really need the help. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
100%. There's no daylight between you and me on that story. I get frustrated when I meet somebody who really doesn't have. They have manufactured stress disorder, right? And I put that label on them, right? they're using, if you will, a buzz word, a PTSD, a buzz acronym, whatever it's called, and when that's not really what's the matter, and that opens up a whole new can of counseling from me, and that is, so why do you have manufactured stress disorder? I want to get to the bottom of what it is that is bothering you, right? And maybe it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't combat, maybe sexual assault, all that stuff. I mean, that stuff is real, okay? But why is it that you believe that you have that? And not always, but often I can get to the point where that's not the point, and then you put them on a path to accepting that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to continue with the theme, if you don't mind, and I know you don't. Is that the problem is there's too many palliative alternatives out there that feed feed the need now, as opposed to cure the problem in a minute,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And that and it's just too common for all of these not for profits that offer palliative care, right? Okay, so the Tri County Veteran Support Network, you have to stay clean, you have to get a job. Okay, we can help you with all that, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
stuff that we can help you with, but but if you don't live up to that, we're not going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you're making a choice to not follow what it is we're saying. To me, that makes it not palliative. It makes it curative because you're trying to change the pattern of their life,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just, hey, you're right, you have a drinking problem, let me buy you a beer. Right? That just makes no sense whatsoever. Right? It's about first find the root cause, problem,
Mm-hmm.
effect,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, and then apply a curative care to it by one, at least in the veteran community. I'm not going to speak to other ones. By one, making them accountable to themselves,
Yes.
and
100%.
and that in itself is curative. That they realize, wait a minute, I am actually more resilient than I thought I was.
Colonel, it's not lost on me, and I touched on this earlier, that we are 40 plus years now removed from the very early 90s. And I know that's hard to believe, right? But 1990, no, close to 40 years removed. Sorry, I should say. But we are 26 years, 36 years removed from 1990. So we're getting close to 40. And it was in the early 90s that this whole debacle of equal playing time and everyone gets a trophy, right? So what we've done is we've raised a generation that have different expectations. And no one wants to talk about this. They want to sweep it under the rug, and that's why we're politically incorrect, because I do want to talk about it. And I do think that that was one of the most damaging things that we ever did to our young people, was to set an expectation that all you have to do is show up. Not keep showing up. Not work hard. Not train hard. Not try and be the best. You just show up and you're going to get equal with everybody else and you're going to get your little trophy. And the reason I picked that date is people that were born in 1990 are 36 today. And there are some amazing young people. You and I teach them, right? I mean, straight as an arrow. But when I'm at a college or a university and the administration says, well, we want to fund a crying room.
Yeah.
I said, a what? A what?
I'm sorry.
I mean, did I hear that correctly? A what bloody room do you want here? And I'm not giving you a dime for that, right? We have created this problem. And so now this whole virtue thing instead of victory allows these folks to leverage empathy, to leverage compassion, and to continue this palliative care movement instead of fixing the problem. Now, luckily I put my children in schools where there was no equal playing time. If you weren't good enough, you had two choices. Get your ass in the gym, get your ass on the practice field or on the practice court, get better, or go do something else, right? No harm or foul. Maybe this isn't for you. And we need to go back to a society that does that. We need to go back to a society that trades in victory driven by virtuous people, not virtue over victory.
That's very well said. It's wonderfully said. You know, the you're 100% correct, right? That the soccer mom, I call the soccer mom approach, right? Everyone's a champion, everyone gets a trophy. Well, that's just not true. Okay.
It's not true.
And I will tell you, all of this starts, I'm going to sound like I'm on a soapbox now, but all of it starts at home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The best teachers you'll ever have are your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They'll either be awful, which is a really good teacher, or they'll be,
mm-hmm.
or they'll be good. Okay. Which is a really good teacher. I'll give you one example. Okay. I thought a lady, I went to a school, the Naval War College, for a year up in Newport, Rhode Island. And my daughter was young and she played soccer. Right. And so I'm at her game. I really thought this lady was going to like punch me. Okay. A mom. I am not in any way caustic or mean. I mean, I think I'm a decent dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody hopes they are. I'm kind to my kids, right? But Gracie my daughter came up after the game, and I said, well, how'd it go? And she said, well, they don't keep score in this league. And I said, I do. You lost. And this lady shot me a look like I'm the worst dad that ever lived, right? When that's not the case at all. I wasn't being rude to my daughter, or I was trying to give her a lesson in, hey, score more. Life gets better when you score more, right? And never subscribe to a process where, they don't keep score. Well, then why are you playing? Okay, so, and boy, I got a look that day. And I told Linda about it, and of course she laughed, my wife, and she laughed about the whole thing. But it starts at home, right? Again, we're not talking about being mean to your kids or anything of that stuff. I'm talking about be accountable to your kids and make your kids accountable to you and themselves. Okay.
And this is why we need more veterans as leaders in the civilian world, because accountability is paramount. If you're not accountable, people actually die. They don't just lose their job. They don't get their emotions hurt. They die. And migrating that leadership and that accountability into the civilian world is what we need. Which leads me to my next question for you, Colonel, about the vets. I think you are now over 1,000 veterans that you've worked with who are either building a business or they're looking to progress in their careers. Talk to us a little bit about those folks, where they come from, how anyone listening can find you so they can avail themselves of the incredible work that you're all doing.
That's a great plug. I'm going to plug you first, and I'll get to that question. Is that if for the listeners out there, okay, Stuart is a veteran as well. Okay, he wore a different color uniform than I did, right? Because he was British, but is a very accomplished and successful warrior. So these conversations that he and I have are both rooted in the fact that we wore our respective country's cloth. So I appreciate your service, Stuart. So thank you. To your question, the Veterans Business Outreach Center so my paycheck says the Citadel on it, but the money that's in it is a grant from the Small Business Administration. So it's a federal grant from DC. There are 31 VBOCs across the country. So if you're not in South Carolina, it doesn't matter. You can go on to Google and type in Veterans Business Outreach Center for Wyoming, you name it, right? And they will give you, now not every state has its own VBOC. South Carolina does, because South Carolina has the highest per capita population of veterans of any state in the union. Okay? And which, when you're talking Texas and California and Florida, I didn't believe that statistic at first, but it's true. Per capita, we have the highest percentage of veterans. So
which is important. Let me interject, and I'm sorry to do this, but that's really important, because this isn't two people on a podcast blowing smoke up our listeners' rear ends. I mean, you are in the trenches every day with the biggest per capita population of veterans in the nation.
We are, and we didn't know. We opened our doors in 1 May of 2023 And we really didn't know what we were even stepping into, right? And then, so we kind of built the aircraft in flight, and there's three of us. There's three total, and we have 1,100 clients now. Okay, we started on 1 May in 23 with 0 clients, and now that has climbed. And we had a goal of starting 10 businesses, or assisting in starting 10 businesses. Where again, we don't do it for you; we just show you how. And the goal was 10, and we opened 26 that first year. And I helped open. And then, so we're like, all right, well, let's adjust that. That might have been just an off year, so we adjusted it to 15, and we're over 32 already. Okay. So my point to that is not, oh, aren't we great? We're doing, we think we're doing well, right? But based on that one metric, what that says to me is the veteran community gets it. Mm-hmm. When they set their mind to something, they're going to do it. I'm just glad that my team and I can be here to help them along that journey, because you think it's daunting. It's really not. It's harder to get out of business than it is to get into business. But we're here to guide them down that path. Okay, that's it. And if you want to get a hold of us, love to hear from you. You can just Google South Carolina Veterans Business Outreach Center, and we'll take you to our website. You can apply to be a client. We'll assign a counselor to you, and we'll set up a time to triage what you're doing, what your business idea is. And I tell all of my clients, here's what's going to happen, because we are very straightforward, not caustic, not mean. We're just straightforward and accountable. And I tell them when I'm teaching that one of 3 things is going to happen at the end of this course, and only one of 3 things. Okay. 1, you start a business and we really hope you're successful. 2, you pivot because you realize your idea maybe wasn't that pragmatic, right? So you kind of massage it and pivot another way. Or 3, you fill out a resume and get a job because you realize this ain't for me. Okay. Then only one of those 3 things is going to happen. All right. So let's get into it. It's been successful because we know the pathway to get you there. The only thing that we can't do for you is give you an idea. It has to be your idea. All right. So come just with an idea and we'll see what we can do. And we'll tell you straight up whether or not we think it's pragmatic. It's not, I'm never going to say you get a bad idea, because that's not my job. That's not my business either. But, I'm going to do whatever we can do for you. And the nice part is that there are parasites out there, right? Like Government Services Exchange, that will charge you for the services that we provide. We don't charge a dime for anything.
I was about to ask you, how expensive is all these wonderful resources? And it's free.
It's all at no cost, right?
It's at totally no cost.
And because I'm an SBA grant, all of the SBA's resource partners are our resource partners, and we're there. So the Small Business Development Center, the SCORE, Women's Business Center, Apex, the list is really long. None of them charge a dime. So it'll cost you, a little under $100 or $200 to get into business with the Secretary of State, but that's really the only cost you have to lay out there initially. Okay.
And the level, I just want to give the Colonel and his program a plug here. Because I've been honored to teach with the Colonel, veterans in the evenings. The Citadel kindly gives us a classroom to do this. So I've had firsthand knowledge of 3 or 4 cohorts now of working with vets. And I'm going to give you a quote. I think he was Navy or Army. He was not a Marine. He was an officer. He came out and he went and got his MBA.
He was Air Force.
He was Air Force. I'm sorry. So we've seen a lot of people come through. So I'm sorry I got confused there. But we were towards the end of that cohort, and it's a 12-week cohort, and it goes deep. It's a deep, deep dive. And he put his hand up in the middle of the class, and he turned. He asked if he could make an announcement, and he turned to the class. And he said, I just want to let everyone here know that I've learned more in this 10 weeks, and of course there were still 2 weeks to go, in this 10 weeks than I learned in 2 years of taking an MBA. And so if you're listening to this and you really, really, really need some help, or you want to take a deep dive, do get in touch with your VBOC. If you're in South Carolina, do get in touch with the Colonel, because the quality of the learning, the quality of the support, the quality of the mentorship, that you will receive is literally world class. World class. And it's all free.
I appreciate that plug very much, Stuart. Yeah, and I have no problem with an MBA. I mean, it's good education. Education of any type really is important. But we're very much with you. You know, you and I teach is very much more the mechanics of, and the MBA is about business, and our course is more about here's how you do business, right? And and so we do get a good return, if you will, and comments from people. Well, the guys at the jail, right? The young man said, if I had access to this education when I was younger, I would have never been in this building,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, we were teaching them the mechanics of how to do business, how to be self-reliant, how to be self-employed, how to, what do you actually have to do rather than just think about it. So, thank you for that plug. It's an honor for me to teach with you, right? And you allow me to be in there, and I really enjoy it.
Well, we need to wrap this up. This has been fascinating. I could talk with you for a month of Sundays about our amazing veterans, what they mean to this country, both during active duty, in the reserves, or then totally in civilian life. We need far more of them. We need far more of them to step into leadership roles in the civilian world. We need to dispel this narrative that all veterans are, under the underpass with a cardboard sign, because they're not. We need to make sure that the resources that are available go to the people that actually need those resources and need the help. I mean, for God's sake, they helped us. It's our turn. And it will always be our turn. But we have got to cut out these choke points that are preventing the capitals that we speak about with an S, getting to the veterans that need it. And it's not about more money. There's enough money. It's about where is the money going? And that's the problem. That's where the cure needs to be brought. And I know you're doing that. So, Colonel, I know you're busy. You've probably got a line outside your door. I can't thank you enough and your family for your service to this amazing country. It's an honor and a privilege to work with you. And of course, General Livingston. I'll leave our listeners with a little anecdote here. So General Livingston is one of, I believe, only 61 living Medal of Honor recipients. Maybe his picture should be next to the word Marine in the dictionary. And the general has a habit of calling the colonel and myself from time to time to ask us, if we would like do things. And the comment from the civilian world is always, why is it that when the general calls you and just asks you to do something, that it always gets done? And my response is, because it's not a bloody ask.
The T is silent. I love it.
And so I think we need to start holding more veterans in the same kind of reverence as that. That's the point I'm trying to make. And he's still a leader. He's 17 surgeries last year, still going strong in his 80s. And we need more of that. And so if folks like the colonel, and I'm speaking to our listeners here, and the general, and thousands and thousands, millions of other incredible veterans that have served this nation are still prepared to serve us, isn't it just if we do whatever we can to serve them?
I thank you, Stuart. I'll tell you first off, it was an honor to serve, right? And I've had people. I'm sorry for very quick. I've had people say, "Does it ever bother you when you meet people and they're like, I was going to join the whatever Army, Marine Corps, but I went another way." And I would say, it doesn't bother me at all. To me, I take it as the greatest compliment you could ever give me, because if the wolf never came to your door, it means we did our job.
That's right.
And so it doesn't bother me a lick when someone says I didn't serve. I'm like, good, we did our job. So
That's right.
you were able to go do whatever it is, and you did that job too, Stuart. So again, from my family to you, thank you for your service and what you did.
Well, you're very welcome. And
an
I love that analogy, by the way, Colonel. The wolf to the door. It's a different kind of wolf, but it's up to us as civilians now to make sure that that other type of wolf isn't showing up on the doorstep of our wonderful veterans who are in need.
That is a great way to put it.
And with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you. Again, to our listeners, you can find Colonel Williams at the VBOC in South Carolina. He will not turn you away. It is free, and the help that you will receive is remarkable. It's sort of beyond my comprehension that this is a solution unknown. Far too few people know about it. That's why we're doing this Solution Unknown podcast series. So again, thank you for all you're doing, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Stuart. I appreciate it. Great
Take
interview.
care. Bye.